Anatomy, Musculoskeletal System. In this video, we'll focus on two bones, the frontal bone and the parietal bone. But let's start with a description of the frontal bone. The frontal bone is an uneven and median bone that closes the cranial box anterior-superiorly. Since it makes up the vault, part of the base, and as you can see the ceiling of the orbital cavity, the frontal bone is very important. So, let's look at it in more detail. The frontal bone, as you can see, can be outlined in a squamous part, which is its upper portion, and an orbital part. Moreover, between the orbital regions, there is a central zone called ethmoidal notch, which is necessary for its articulation with the ethmoid bone. But let's start from the squamous part. The external side of the squamous part is convex and is quite smooth with no foramen in its upper part. However, in the lower part, it forms two structures called eyebrow arches that joins together at a raised point called glabella. This consists of a residue of the joint between the two frontal bones, which are two during the embryonic development, but later become one single bone. On the eyebrow arches, you can see some foramen. The first is known as the supraorbital foramen, while the second is known as the frontal foramen. These foramen are necessary for the flow of vessels and nerves which irrigate the frontal region. The inner aspect of the squamous part is slightly more complex, as it is concave and above all because its base ends with the upper part of the orbital cavity, which has a series of foramen and structures. Inside, you can see a ridge on the frontal bone which is located along the sagittal plane. This ridge forms a great cerebral side, one of the ligamentous structures of the dura mater, which provides fixity to the brain. And below this, there is a foramen called blind foramen. The blind foramen enables the passage to the emissary vein of the upper sagittal sinus. Well, overall, this is the description of the squamous part. And if we observe the orbital section of the bone, we will notice that, unlike the squamous part, its external portion is concave, while the internal one is convex. Therefore, due to its structures, we'd better distinguish it from the squamous part. In the anterior and medial section, there is a cavity called trochlear foveae, which allows the passage of the trochlear nerve, the fourth pair of encephalic nerves that innervates one of the oculomotor muscles. Well, on this aspect, there are two small foramen called ethmoidal foramen, an anterior one and a posterior one. The orbit is linked to the ethmoid cells through these holes. As you can see, the ethmoidal notch has a horseshoe shape. There is an anterior spine called a nasal spine, thanks to which the frontal bone articulates with the nasal bone. There is also a series of cells known as superior ethmoid cells, through which the frontal bone articulating with the ethmoid closes some cavities. Anteriorly, still on the internal side, there are two holes that instead are connected to a structure that is located in the bone. In fact, by dissecting the frontal bone inside, there are some sinuses that are open and communicate with the nasal cavities, as you can see below, precisely through the openings we've just seen. As with all paranasal sinuses, their functions are lightening the massive bone, helping the phonation, and heating the air. Let's focus on the description of the parietal bone. The parietal bones are even and symmetrical bones that form the cranial vault, closing it in the highest region. They form the head of the skull cap. They are joined together by sagittal suture, but they keep their individuality. And since they are very simple bones, as they are mere lamina, they have very few structures. But let's take a closer look at them. As you can see, there are simple quadrilateral lamina, with a concave exterior side and a convex interior side. The outer aspect has ridges called upper temporal line and lower temporal line, which are used for the articulation of some joint muscles. The inner aspect is flat and has only the impression of the vessels and of the gyri. This bone has four marginal parts, one anterior called frontal, one lateral called temporal, one posterior called occipital, and lastly the sagittal margin, along which it joins the contralateral bone. This video was created thanks to Anatomy Learning, an interesting free web app. The hyperlink can be found in the description. Instead, the text used for the concepts is Human Anatomy of Eddie Hermes. Thanks for watching.